Episode 12, delve further with the newly announced Montreal Rebellion head coach upgrade, big moves, Dreamcasts. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Volamel. How are you?
Good. It's bright and early. I believe it's Thursday. You know, sometimes esports and the sleep schedule doesn't always pan out the way that we'd hope, but I believe it's Thursday morning.
Hey man, it's the first day of the owl week. You better know if it's Thursday or not.
That's true. That is true. I've been up, kind of nerding out a little bit, doing my own little research. But we're not here to talk about what I'm doing. We're here to talk about the Montreal Rebellion and your little bit of history, because I think not a lot of people know who you are. I think people know you for some of the things that you've done, but nobody knows who really Dream is. So I wanted to kind of get into that. And first, what people might not realize or know is before you did all this gaming stuff, you actually were a film student, correct?
Yes, yeah, that's right. I mean, I've been into esports for a long time, but I was just like a big fan, and sometimes I did like my own like analysis blog post stuff, but just like as a hobby or whatever. But I was going to school studying film. Yeah. I mean, I'm still super interested in film, but just some life stuff. You know, it's not a great idea to go heavily into debt for a film degree. So I didn't finish my studies, but it's something that I'd like to return to. I still love movies.
Yeah.
A lot, yeah.
A connoisseur of the arts, I can definitely appreciate that. What really kind of interests you about movies? Is it the imagery? You know, what kind of got you hooked in studying about, you know, film?
Sure. So I mean, growing up, I was always really into like movies and books, just anything narrative. I really like a good story and good characters and something you can kind of like connect with on like just at all humans level. You know what I mean? There's just some like elements of stories that just kind of speak to pretty much everybody. But the thing that I like so much about film is the fact that you can like mix all of these elements together. So like just the existence of a narrative, but also it's like really visual. There's a lot of like sound and music involved, and then like the editing process, you know, the cuts. I just think there's a ton of flexibility there, and you can really make narratives hit in very, very different ways because you just have so many tools at your disposal rather, and so many things working together, and a whole lot of people working together too. Like a lot of films are I mean, not all of them are huge crews, but it's always a big collaboration, and there's always a lot of people contributing. So you can really like stretch yourself and try to do different things that you aren't able to do, I think, in some of those more individual art mediums.
No, definitely. I think collaboration is an interesting word, and now that you kind of pose it that way, I guess, yeah, it does make a lot of sense with, you know, what the writer does for a script and how the director interprets it and tries to put it in a visual kind of medium. Do you find that maybe that directors are a little bit overblown? Do you wish there was maybe a little bit more love to the writers? Is there any like undersung hero when it comes to filmmaking?
Sure. Well, I think it really depends. Like, depends on the film, depends on the director, also depends on the producer, because the producer kind of sets the rules and establishes power. But it's interesting because in film, the power dynamic is very much more towards the director, and there's like auteur theory where, you know, the director is like the author of the work, and you can look at it through that lens, and people whatever debate that back and forth. But when you look at theater, for example, the script, the screenplay, or I'm sorry, the play itself is considered like the thing you have to stick to. It's not up to the director to reinterpret or rewrite on set if things are needed. It's like you have to stick to that original work. You sit within that framework, then you can make, you know, additional interpretations outside of the framework, but whatever is on the page can't really be argued with. So it's really interesting that there's that difference there. I think for film in general, most I think it really just depends on the budget, really. Like most big films, you can tell the director's influence, but you can also tell the editor's influence, the the director of cinematography, director of photography's influence as well. Like you can really feel all that. Whereas when you get into the smaller movies, a lot of the times the directors can exert a lot more control because the producers aren't beholden to the big investors or whatever. So it really depends, and it's also to your taste, right? There are times where I want like some really weird take that you can only get from a singular vision from a director that has a lot of control, and then other times you just kind of want things that are a little more palatable, and you go with the bigger options. What's interesting is people like Denis Villeneuve, the guy that recently did Arrival and Blade Runner 2049, is sort of starting to get the ability to have a really big budget and kind of do whatever he wants with it. And the last director we really had like that, in my opinion, has been Christopher Nolan, and I'm not a huge fan of him or his work. So having more people be able to follow in his footsteps but not necessarily have the same style, I'm pretty excited about.
Awesome. Would you say that not Nolan, but the former director, would you say that he's one of your I guess favorite, or do you have some favorites that people might kind of latch onto and might know?
Sure. So Denis Villeneuve's definitely one. He also did Prisoners a while back with like Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal. That's a really, really good movie. He's just been on a hot streak for like almost a decade now. He's actually a French Canadian, by the way, and I'm from Montreal, which is like a super cool
little
super
tie-in
cool thing going on. Yeah, exactly. Which is super interesting. I didn't even think about that until just now. But also, I'm a really big fan of the films. Well, the earlier films, the more recent films are a bit more questionable. The most recent too, but Kim Ji-woon, he's a Korean director. He did like one on Netflix that a lot of people have seen, would be The Good, the Bad, and the Weird, which is nicknamed a kimchi western because it's like a Korean like western, like train heists, like cowboy duels, like full on western. Really, really interesting. But actually, the reason that I go by Dream is one of his movies called A Bittersweet Life. There's a like kind of a monologue at the end of the movie about a dream, and that is where my name comes from. So very cool. Definitely Kim Ji-woon, one of my favorite directors. I also like Wong Kar-wai a lot. He's a very well-known Hong Kong director. Really, really big fan. Kurita Hirokazu is a Japanese director I really like. So I try and kind of watch a lot of movies from a lot of different places and learn from a lot of different schools of cinema that way, I guess. So I mean, I could kind of go on for hours and hours if we wanted to talk about movies on this.
I think we could do a whole podcast about, film theory and teaching my incredibly smooth peanut brain about, what makes a good movie and what is good imagery and, what makes a good plot, all that good stuff.
Hey, if we get to watch a bunch of the movies, I'm down to do it, man. I'll go back and rewatch. I love movies, man.
That is kind of interesting. I don't know if you've caught up with it, but I think Monte Cristo, for those of you who aren't necessarily super into esports, but he is one of the Overwatch League commentators and has been in League of Legends for quite a while, or was at least. Was doing, I think he was streaming recently in a very interesting getup, and was reviewing old film noir movies. Is that like a genre that kind of interests you?
Yeah, actually, so before my name was Dream, my ID was Noir because that's my favorite film genre.
Okay.
So yeah, no, that's definitely a genre that interests me. Actually, no, I'm a big fan. Obviously, I think he did Casablanca, which I would argue is not actually a noir film. It's like a proto-noir, and noir films draw a lot of stylistic notes from that. Okay. But I would argue that it's not actually a film noir. It's like a pre-noir. But Bogart was in the first real film noir, in my opinion, that we think of, that has all the classic beats and
Sure.
story elements that you think, where, the PI and the damsel in distress, but like, is she lying? She's so mysterious. We don't know what's going on. There's the MacGuffin that everyone's after. So that film that he was in, the Maltese Falcon, is like the first of them, and kind of the last noir, that kind of the end cap, in my opinion, that kind of ended the genre and made it, kind of capped everything. So we had to start on like the new era was Chinatown, like the famous Jack Nicholson picture, where it kind of ends noir, and then everything after that is like a statement about noir, or like today's version of noir, and they're all like called neo noir movies, and those kind of took off. And then in the 80s there was a kind of the Miami Vice aesthetic bleeding into things. So then you had things like a neon noir, and one of my favorite films of all time is one of those called Thief. Oh, it's absolutely great, starring James Caan. Yeah, one of my all-time favorites. So definitely check any movie that I've recommended on this list. I would say A Bittersweet Life or Thief would be are really, yeah, well, they're really, really good movies, but they're not just like heady artsy movies that you have to be in like a certain zone to appreciate. They're just really good, like kind of gripping movies that I think are super enjoyable. Yeah.
And that's the thing kind of throughout the my time knowing you. I tend to weigh your opinion on things very very highly, I would say. And there are times where, I might have my own take on things, and we can debate on that. And, again, I'm probably wrong. It doesn't matter. But you do tend to put a lot of thought in, and you're very thoughtful when you kind of put forth and say things and speak on things. So definitely, again, if Dream talks film and you're interested, definitely give those a look. But I find that both of us are kind of kindred spirits after kind of, digging a little bit through just small talk with you. We actually have a weird kind of two ships crossing in the night. I was not big on posting on the MLG forums, but I know that you were, and actually you were quite interested in the old Halo circuit for MLG. Is that accurate?
Yes. I was super into MLG starting in middle school. I had a friend of mine at school whose older brother played Halo 2 on Game Battles.
Okay.
And that kind of jump-started me. Before that, my esports experience was I was on an online clan on PlayStation 2, Battlefront 2.
Oh, wow.
Back in the day. So just complete Wild West, like not esports at all, just a bunch of 12-year-old kids smack talking each other. Yeah.
Very cool.
So that was my experience prior to that, but Halo 2 was kind of my start. I was big on the forums. I watched all the events. I went to a couple MLG Orlandos in the early 2010s. But I was also really big into Shadowrun at the time. I was on Smash boards. I was super into Melee, and I was there when Brawl came out, and it like splintered the community, and people went to different websites. And I don't know, I've just always been really, really into esports. It's been a big part of my life, but MLG specifically was a huge part of that. So, seeing Puckett working Overwatch League just every day, I'm just like, Puckett's the man. Like I love Chris Puckett so much.
I just I think it was yesterday that I had spoke with Ham Tornado, and Puckett came up and talked about the old championship Sundays where him and Sundance would come out with a little bit of beef at the top. Who knows what they did the night before, but they were here to commentate, and they would do anything and everything. And that's what I remember very fondly of my summer vacations, staying up a little bit too late, not doing the homework. It is what it is, but we're here. We made something of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I loved about MLG was that kind of like still had that level of kind of grassroots hometown esports. Like it became a really big circuit, but every year, like MLG Columbus, it was personal and it was grimy. Yes. You know what I mean? Like that was the heartland of Halo, was the Midwest, and MLG Columbus was everybody coming out to kind of show out, and I loved those events specifically. I can remember old MLG Chicago when they were still running Shadowrun, with most of Final Boss playing under STK.
That's a throwback. That's a very old name, STK.
Yeah, shoot to kill, baby.
Yep.
Yeah, so no, I'm a big MLG fan. I played on game battles starting with Halo 3 and like Modern Warfare 2 and stuff like that, and played Shadowrun and all that stuff, and then kind of game hopped around on console playing like Brink and Red Faction Guerrilla and Monday Night Combat and like every COD that came out, all the gears that came out, right?
Sure.
So played a ton on console, and that's really where I got my start with esports. But the grassroots element that MLG had, I think it wasn't going to last forever, right?
Sure,
like esports was going to get bigger and get more polished, but it's an era that I was glad that I was like able to experience and like be a part of. And I will say that to this day, one of my favorite things is the fact that Sundance retweeted my praise of Shadowrun. And that
is pretty cool. Let's go Sundance. Yeah. He is kind of an enigma now that he's retired and
yeah, he's like stepped away from like public life, and now he's like his son.
It's sad,
like 10
right?
or 11, and
he's like this big streamer.
Yeah,
it's
I don't know,
wild.
It's cool. I like how he's kind of stepped back and let it do its own thing while he still takes that management stance and still is like a voice of reason in esports and of knowledge from the business side of things. But he still makes that occasional, step out of the shadows and into the light, and it's just, I just enjoy it. I like
he's something else. He was always that. It gave off the vibe of like a really cool uncle to have. Like, oh yeah, I run like gaming events. Isn't that kind of cool, guys? Like, you want to come hang out at my gaming event? I don't know. Seemed
super dope.
Came up with the Hawaiian shirts, like just a very chilled, doesn't take himself too seriously. I mean,
he knows he's like getting it done.
Yeah,
and like that's what's important, and like people just want it to be authentic and want it to be like executed correctly. Like that doesn't mean you get to just slack off. Like he always got it done. It was always great. The championship Sundays always kicked ass, but it was never like suit and tie uptight Sundance, and that was
no. Like I can't recall a time I've ever seen or remember a time where Sundance was in a suit. It was always like a fairly, to kind of go back to the film theory, very kind of Vice, polo button up.
Yeah, he could be on like a driving range.
Yeah,
bro, like a full golf course.
He just got back from just shooting 18 and just decided to stop in and see how Puckett and Sepso and Shibby and doing the ultimate gaming house.
Oh, bro, I wanted that Dr. Pepper mini fridge so bad, bro.
That was the most sought out after item, I'd say. Yeah,
that and the MLG neon sign, bro. Those two things.
Yeah. That's the stamp of approval. You can't go wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
With the giant MLG sign. From that same discussion with Ham, do you remember the flavor grenades that Hot Pocket sponsored them?
Yes. Oh, I hadn't thought about that in years, dude. Oh.
I mentioned to her two things because I know that she's obviously going to be a little bit closer than the two of us, but I asked her to ask Puckett about Stride Gum and then the Hot Pocket flavor grenades, like the weird barbecue, the barbecue. Like I tried them once just because I was like, you know what, I like MLG. Hot Pockets aren't terrible. They've had this
show your support, bro.
Passion child. They were terrible. Holy shit, they were bad.
Yeah, I stuck to the Tom T Squared Taylor labeled Dr. Peppers, bro. I did not get, and I used Stride gum. I did. I really
Yeah,
did.
Stride's not bad. Don't get me wrong.
But yeah, I was never brave enough for the flavor grenades, man. Maybe that's why I didn't get the Ultimate Gaming House. But then again, neither did you. So maybe
that's true. That's true. I was very much a lurker. I did not post. I think I have, if I can recall, even my. I don't even know if they're still around. I think I made like one post like when Reach was a thing about, you know, what the competitive setting should be, and I don't know things. I just put in my 2 cents and never checked it back, and whatever. It wasn't.
Yeah. No, I mean, I posted a pretty decent amount, but the post that I remember the most on the MLG forums, which are now down, by the way. I was trying to go through and find this post to save it, and I couldn't. But our high school made like shirts for fundraising for like the different teams, and you could like buy a shirt to support the team.
Sure.
And there was one for like the wrestling team, and it literally had the Final Boss logo, like the exact same logo on the shirt. And it's like, I don't know if they just like bought it from the same like person that Final Boss bought it from, or if they just like legit ripped
Straight
it or something.
Copy,
like,
yeah.
I don't know. But it was literally the exact same. So one of my friends that I went to high school with, I did not know was not just an MLG forum user, but a power user, made a thread about it. And I was like, oh, well, he didn't post any pictures. I'm going to post some pictures of this fucking shirt, bro, that looks, yeah, exactly like the Final Boss logo has a Final Boss logo on it. So that was one of my favorite, like when I think back to the MLG like era, it's like me posting online like my high school shirt stole Final Boss's logo. Like that's what I remember, you know. It was great.
Would you say that MLG and the kind of grassroots events and the atmosphere in the community with, like, you know, the post IRC boards kind of shaped your interest into getting into like League of Legends or, you know, some of the modern esports titles?
Sure. Well, League was a weird transition for me, but I was very much involved in the IRC era as well. I also was doing some in Halo 3. I was really big into Griffball.
All right.
Competitively, RoosterTeeth.com ran a league. They're bringing it back with the Master Chief Collection. So they're actually bringing back a old Halo 3 Griffball league. So if any of you guys liked Halo 3 Griffball, which was, I mean, the best Griffball, we don't have to argue about it. But if any of you guys are into that, there's interest there. Look up AGLA Griffball. It's dope. I'm looking to make a comeback.
Oh.
So
you and the Montreal boys, maybe?
Yeah, we'll see. I'm gonna have to purchase an Xbox so I can play. But no, the transition to League of Legends, actually, funnily enough, my little brother played this game, Global Agenda, I think. It was like the very first high-res game. It was like a free-to-play MMO.
It's like a sci-fi kind of like
you're like
MMO
these big robot
RPG.
Guys or
Yeah.
Like I didn't really play the game that much. Like my little brother played it, and I was just like,
no
dope.
shame.
Like, have fun playing the game, you know, no worries. I've never been super big into MMOs. I don't like grinding. I just like playing competitively against someone from the jump. I don't want to have to level up to be able to, you know, be better.
Get the skill and then get the armor. Yeah, skip all that. I just want to
1v1 you.
Gotcha.
Not that I'm good at all that, but like that's what interests me.
Yes, exactly.
So Hi-Rez shut the game down because they were working on their next game. They high-resed it. You know, the start of a streak. But he was looking for another game to play that was free to play, and we had kind of a crappy computer. It was just like the terrible family computer in the living room. And I just did some research, and League of Legends had just come out of beta a few months ago. And I told him he should play that, and I like set him up an account, and I downloaded the game because he was just like depressed that Global Agenda was dead and wasn't doing anything. So I set it up on the computer for him and had him play, and he got super into it. And then a few months later, around like November of, I think, 2010.
Okay.
I think that's the year it was. I started playing right when Trundle and like Cassiopeia came out. So it was it was shortly after the beta. I'm pretty sure it was around November of 2010, is when I started playing. And I just got, once I started playing, I got super into the game, and really liked it a lot. It was my first like actual PC game. I played like, I mean, I say that I played like some RTS games in like the 90s, like when I was way younger.
Sure.
On my stepdad's computer, I played like the Red Alert games, all the Command and Conquer stuff, like Tiberian Sun, Tiberian Dawn. I really liked those games, but other than that, it was mostly console stuff for me growing up. So League was an interesting step back in. You know, going to MLGs and viewing MLG, there was always like StarCraft stuff going on, and sometimes WoW Arena stuff. I would get like kind of interested in StarCraft, but not really in WoW. And but the first PC esport I was genuinely like a spectator for, kind of involved in, was League of Legends. Yeah.
Very interesting. It's the more we talk, the more kind of similarities. Like, I grew up on RTS. I'm kind of a Blizzard baby, and I remember Red Alert 2 and trying to play against people on LAN and Tiberian Sun, and me and my dad would have little strats, and I'd sit and like watch him, and like the little dudes, like the bikes would blow up and you have like tires bouncing around, like the little robot cyborg dudes, when they got like too low health, that like their legs would blow off and they'd be crawling around all slow. I don't know, just random facts that I remember. But
Yeah.
how exactly did the interest and the love, well, I don't know if I'd say love, but you know, you maybe can correct me if I'm wrong, the interest from League of Legends, how did that kind of transfer to Overwatch? When did you first kind of see it? What was your first take on it? I know that some people were a little standoffish because they're like, I don't know what this is, but you know, tell me how you first got into Overwatch specifically.
Sure. So I had a long time. I mean, yeah, I was playing League for a long time. Ever since it first came out, I was super into it. I was watching all the games. I was into it from a competitive standpoint. I really liked the esports side of it, you know, staying up all night to watch Korean and Chinese matches. And I was just kind of like, I get really into things when I get into them. So I was really into League and League esports for years. But it got to the point where I was kind of getting burned out on League of Legends. Okay. I was kind of sick of, you know, the newest jungle rework and, you know, the newest rebalance of heroes, and I was just kind of getting I felt the game was getting stale. I wasn't really happy with where it was going. I wasn't really interested in it anymore. It was just kind of, it had run its course for me personally. And this was, I was starting to feel like really bad League fatigue about 6 months before Overwatch's release. I was not in the beta at all, but I was like, maybe this will be a game I can be interested in. This is really cool. I'm like, League was my first PC game, but I was into shooters on console all growing up. You know, this could be a cool marriage of those ideas, right? And I'm really big into the esports side. I've never really been big in a Blizzard esport. That's always something that I have been interested in, is how Blizzard does their esports, obviously from the StarCraft side of things. And Hearthstone had never really been my jam either. So I was happy to look at that. So I started watching tournaments in beta. I mean, I wasn't in the beta, but I was watching all the events like from the jump. So way back, anything that was streamed, even when it was just people's POVs, before they were even really getting casted. So basically, I was just burned out on my last title, and I saw Overwatch as, you know, it's got a lot of appeal from, you know, the MOBA genre that I'm familiar with, both League and Dota, because during my first League burnout phase, I tried to hop to Dota, and I was like, this doesn't actually fix anything or make it better. So yeah, that's really what caused me to transition into Overwatch and to be really big in the scene. And then obviously when Overwatch League got announced, I was just super hyped to see how that would pan out, and then what it would look like for, you know, the difference between what we're talking about at MLGs, which are, you know, circuits with people just like driving to a convention center. And it's just, you know, I played an open bracket to try and qualify in. And then there's the style of Overwatch League where it's like, well, that's not exactly, you know, how it works anymore. It's more like a real professional sports league that I was used to watching growing up. So it was really cool to hear that they were going to go for something like that. So of course I was just super interested, and only really from a spectator's perspective. I wasn't really looking to be involved in the scene directly, but I was just really hyped to watch all of it and enjoy the esports scene, kind of be a part of it in that sense.
And that's where I kind of wanted to go next. Again, most people probably first kind of caught wind of you with the Jane kind of analysis contest, but there seems to be a gap in between when you kind of were first interested in Overwatch and that moment. So what kind of lit the spark into you kind of putting your foot forward and trying to work with teams, or maybe even be a player yourself? What kind of fill in that blank for me?
Sure. So definitely at no point was it in my future to be a player.
Fair enough.
I'll blame it on the fact that I grew up playing console games, but I have potato aim. I am bad at clicking on things, so there was never a chance for me to make it pro from a player perspective. But basically, throughout my time in other esports as a fan, I was always very interested on the analytical side. Like I said, I would write my own analysis and like make blog posts and go on Reddit and talk about what I thought was going to happen. I actually won a couple prediction contests and stuff like that in League of Legends, and I was always just really into the strategic side of things. And that carried over into Overwatch. But what made me decide I wanted to take Overwatch seriously, and originally I wanted to be a caster and do content, and that's why I have casts in my name, because I was casting Overwatch.
It's true.
But basically the spark of all of that was my girlfriend Riley got a trip, like a conference out to LA for her school. She's a theater major, and a show she was in was basically playing at a conference there. So they flew her out and had all this stuff paid for the trip. So it was really cheap for me to just go on the trip as well. And when she was busy doing stuff she had to do at the conference, I just went to some OWL matches. And I just really was inspired by the atmosphere in the arena. And I just thought, like, man, imagine my job being to come here. Instead of the job I had, which at the time was working in a call center for a major insurance company. Certainly not as exciting as competing, and being in an arena like that and feeling how excited everyone was to be there. So that really made me want to try and take it seriously, to have esports be a job. But yeah, I did start out casting during my time in college. I had run some like local LAN events for our university gaming club, which was pretty. Some of the events were pretty large, and I casted both League and Melee at those events, and I helped run like the casting teams, like picked
Awesome.
other casters, put duos together, helped them improve all sorts of stuff. So I had experience in casting and broadcasting. So that's where I wanted to look initially, and I was, that's kind of where I set my sights. I was like, hey, I want to make content and try and cast and use my analysis from that angle. I had a video lined up. I was like, all right, so I'm really interested in the different styles of defense on Hanamura Point A that we're seeing in Overwatch League. Some teams are putting Orisa on the low ground. Some teams are putting Orisa on the high ground. Some teams are running like monkey comps on defense. Like, what's going on? Some teams are playing Reinhardt up close, like Dallas Fuel. And this was in stage 4, and I was like really interested in that. So I started writing up a video. And then Jane announced that he was having an analysis contest based on Philadelphia Fusion getting full held on Hanamura Point A.
Oh, so you were already prepped.
I was like, let's go, baby. So I basically had already shot half of my video where I talked about things in general and like what I thought about the point and why different strategies worked the way they did. and like what the goals of the strategies were. And I was going to shoot the second half the next day, and he announced the contest after I had shot the first half on the first day. So on the second day, all I did was add as one of the specific examples Philly Fusion's push,
Right.
To talk about what I had just talked about in the first half. So I didn't even have to change the first half at all. I just added a couple minutes of content to the second half of the video, and posted and submitted it. I did not expect to do well at all. Really, the reason that I was so excited to submit it was Jane said that he would give at least a sentence or two of feedback to every single entrant. And to me, I was like, that's what I want to know. Like, this is the first thing that I'm trying to do in taking esports seriously. I want to make sure I'm on the right track. This is a great opportunity to get some sort of feedback, maybe get some, positive encouragement, and like keep pushing through. And then with no warning, no one like told us how the rounds were going or anything. He just tweets the results. And just, I like did like a triple take. I was like, no, this is like a typo or something, bro. Like, this isn't me, like I literally didn't believe it. So it was like a crazy moment. And then he had us on stream, had all the finalists on stream to talk, and a lot of the other finalists are now doing coaching stuff as well. I was really the only one that was looking at it from a content perspective. The other people were all wanting to be coaches. But yeah, I think I ended up winning the on-stream segment mostly because I was just like using the skills from casting of like staying on topic and like moving quickly and like getting to the point quickly, where a lot of the other guys had really, really smart things to say, but weren't as focused or were a little nervous and were going off on tangents and stuff like that. And I think that the format just kind of played to my strengths of the broadcast background. So that just ended up helping me a lot. And then from there, I just kept casting, kept making connections, kept trying to make content. And eventually I was able to get the gig as analyst on Hurricane. And that was really where my competitive experience kind of got started.
And that's what's so interesting when we talk about the dynamics and the dichotomy between, the old MLGs and how grassroots they were, and Overwatch with its massive franchise league, and where is there room for any kind of community growth. I think what, Jane's doing with Elo Hell and what he's previously done with his, his little analysis competition, there still is an element of grassroots movements and people being able to shine. And I think your story blossoming in from somebody who was just trying to make a video, and it just so happened to align so perfectly, and coincidentally almost just it perfectly fits with it. You slap the big brain on there and you're immediately kind of thrust into an academy team for an Overwatch League slot. Kind of first impressions, maybe of a visceral memory of just kind of when did it all kind of set in? When did the surreal feeling kind of hit you that, wow, like a week ago I was, taking calls from a call center, and now I'm doing this full time. Like when did that all hit you?
Sure. Well, during Hurricane, I was still working my job in the insurance company. So I was still working there, depending on the week, like 25 or 30 hours.
Okay.
And then Hurricane was a lot of hours as well. But basically it was still kind of crazy just because I did have to reduce my hours at my regular job. And of course, all my coworkers are like, hey, you're not around as much, like, what's going on? And I have to kind of explain to them that I'm like, coaching
doing this
for
gaming
this
thing,
British, Overwatch team, which is just, it doesn't get any simpler to explain or easier to explain to people. And it's kind of crazy. And I'm not really a fan of like having those conversations and trying to explain it to people. I like it more when people are just like, yeah, all right.
Okay.
And like, we just kind of move on.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but really it didn't really sink in entirely until I was able to leave that job. after getting picked up by Montreal, the Toronto Academy team, which is
Okay.
obviously my current position. But before that, um, it was still like I want to make this happen,
Hmm.
but it hasn't fully happened for me yet because I still have to have my day job, you know.
Right. Yeah.
But with Hurricane, it still was very much like it was like halfway there because it's not like I'm not supporting myself doing this, but I'm competing and I
Sure.
am very competitive.
Hmm.
So I very, very much like wanted to win and was willing to put in an insane amount of time and effort to try and make the team as good as possible. And that's the thing is that there's no universe where Hurricane would have asked me to work as many hours as I did, but um I want to win. Like
Yeah.
there's no two ways about it. So whatever I can do to make that more possible is what I'm gonna do. Um, but I really really liked my time with Hurricane, and I don't think that I could have asked for a better start in Overwatch than being underneath the Cloud9 org. Obviously a really big, well respected org with a lot of resources, and they have plenty of good people working for them. So I really enjoyed my time with them, and then the individuals on Hurricane. Obviously, Nuki just has a sterling reputation for a reason.
Hmm.
Is absolutely great. Plenty of good players there, players that I am surprised are still in contenders and haven't been picked up for Overwatch League, especially considering how important I think having European players with GOATS experience on your team right now is. Um, but yeah, and the coaches as well. Elbion's great. Knox is an excellent head coach with a great mind for the game. And we were even working with Christopher
Hmm.
for a little bit. Obviously, it was unannounced. He was working with us, and then he got yoinked to Philly, so he wasn't with us for too long. But he was just an absolutely excellent coach when he was with us. So I'm sure that he's doing really really good things with Philly now as well.
Well, it looks to be, Philly's at least doing okay for themselves. We'll have to we'll wait and see what happens with week 2. But I did want to kind of reference something that he mentioned before we jump straight into how Montreal was built and the nitty gritties with the rebellion, right?
Sure, sure.
On the topic of bringing European talent within the league and how important that might be. Christopher had mentioned that maybe the Hurricane might not have been the best bet because you guys were a team that was very flexible, that did want to play some multi DPS compositions. You had a lot of different looks. Does that is that true? Is Christopher kind of speaking out of school here? How strong was the Hurricanes goats?
So I think for sure by the time playoffs came around
Mm-hmm.
in season 3, we were the second best team in Europe, or in the top two. It was us and Giganti, and then everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can see that by the results that they got, how closely we played them in the first round, and how they comfortably, kind of cruised past the other teams
Mm-hmm.
in playoffs. Um, so I think that if you were to bring that Hurricane team into a competition with Overwatch League teams, I think you would see them be more proficient at GOATs than
Mm-hmm.
these Overwatch League teams, but additionally have that flexibility that I think the Overwatch League teams haven't fully explored yet. So I think that we're seeing a lot of teams rely heavily on GOATs because they put so much practice time
Sure.
into GOATs, purely because it's a comp they're not good at and they know it's going to be necessary on some maps in some situations. But certainly the amount, or from a percentage basis, the amount of GOATs that is being played right now is not going to continue.
Mm.
Like for sure, the amount of goats is definitely going to go down. Definitely, some teams are going to realize that they're not going to be able to compete with the best goats teams, so they're not going to try and go into those goats mirrors. It's just going to be bad for them. But there are also a lot of points where goats can be very easily assaulted and punished by triple or quad DPS compositions, especially on like payload maps. It can be questionable on assault because snowballing that second point can be difficult with DPS comps, because Goats just has so much sustain and so much HP to burn through. But I think we'll see a lot less Goats be played and a lot more of these DPS comps. And then we'll also start seeing, even dive and other DPS comps that aren't made to beat the tanks, but are made to actually counter the DPS that we're seeing come out from the other side. So control maps, I think we'll see some examples of that, where right now we're seeing kind of one team go out on a Goats comp and the other team come out on like a Pharah DPS. We'll start seeing teams anticipate the Pharah DPS comp, the anti-Goats, to come out. So they'll play a DPS that is, set up to beat that Pharah. So play like a Widow or Ashe hit scan comp with some flankers, so that they can take out that Pharah and kind of punish the solo heal or dual heal kind of solo main tank style that we're seeing. So I think that we started to see hints at that. If you go back and watch some of the control maps from the end of the first week of OWL, you'll actually see some teams starting to mess around with that a little bit to varied success, sometimes just having to swap. But I think you're going to see a lot more exploration in that way. And I think the fact that Hurricane is flexible and does have the ability to play that would actually kind of play into their hand in the long run throughout stage 1.
All right, Christopher, put on notice. Dreamcast coming for that Philly spot. We just got to get through one season contenders and coming for you, buddy. Coming for you. Now, speaking of contenders, you're now the head coach of the Montreal Rebellion. We didn't get to meet the expectations of, being able to quit the job and make this full time, right? It's finally a reality with Montreal. I'll re-ask the question. How does that feel?
Amazing, man. It's so great to be able to just get up and know that I can focus entirely on Overwatch and not have to worry about my day job and the stresses of an office job and dealing with all that stuff and trying to work time in to watch VODs while I'm at work and stuff like that. Being able to schedule out my day and focus and put all my energy into it just feels great, because this is something that I really like doing, and I like competing, and I want to feel like I can give my all to the competition to try and win. So it's honestly, it's like a relief of like this whole extra thing that I had to to worry about when I was trying to balance what sort of prep I could do or what improvements we could make. Now I can just put all my focus and energy into it, and it is nice.
It's pretty nice. That's good. I'm glad to hear. Now, did you have full control of how the roster was kind of picked through? Could we, talk and walk through exactly how this Rebellion roster kind of came to be?
Sure. So the staff was put together first. We came together as a staff. So that's Blizzard as the manager, myself as the head coach, and Zenith as the assistant coach. There was some input from Defiant and Babinski, the Mirage management, as to who would be in the trials. And we also brought the people we wanted to bring into the trials. And I wouldn't say that I had like complete executive decisions over who I wanted. Like if I had wanted someone and no one else wanted them, I would not have gotten my way.
Okay.
But it just so happens that the people that I wanted in every role were agreed on. Like, people agreed with me. They were happy to make that decision. We never had to butt heads on it. It felt like we kind of knew what we wanted from the team, what our vision of the team is, what our priorities were, what we were looking for from players, wanting them to be like, with such a short amount of time to get the team together and get up on the meta. We wanted players that we were confident weren't going to have any like synergy or attitude issues, people that were professional, wanted to work hard. I mean, we're moving to a gaming house. We needed people that we felt wouldn't be an issue in an environment like that. And obviously we're looking for players that are intelligent, right? Because we need to be able to put the team together quickly. I need to be able to give players assignments on things to work on or VOD to watch, and be confident that they can take something away from that without always having to have coaching resources given to them. So we put a lot of emphasis on that. And obviously mechanical skill is a big thing we look at as well. But there was no big disagreement or argument amongst management and coaching staff on who we were going to get. We knew who we wanted. Thankfully, we were able to make them offers that they were happy with, and we were able to put together what I think is a pretty strong team in North American contenders. So
I'd say
I'm very
so.
happy with it.
I think you got some big hitters on there. Logix, I remember Shane being out there. I think he, if I remember correctly, I think he had like a substitute for Envision when they went to China, if I'm remembering correctly. Again, there are some big hitters on that roster. I think Naga, Hui, names that people who follow contenders are going to know and are going to definitely want to support. I think people are. I don't think I've seen power rankings just yet because we're not entirely too sure when contenders is happening, but I'm sure they'll be out there, and I'll be interested to see exactly how the community is ranking you guys. I hear that people are very fond of the logo, though. I hear that branding is A+, best in
our
best in
branding is the best in contenders, no questions asked. I'll even stick it to the endemic esports orgs that have their classic branding like Envy and NRG. It's not as good as the Montreal Rebellion. Our branding is sick.
Quite good.
It's very good, and that's a great thing. We've also got a bunch of really cool sponsorships lined up. Obviously, I can't name everything until it's announced, but there's a lot of local support and enthusiasm in Montreal for having a Montreal-based esports team, and that is affording us a lot of good opportunities in Montreal that I think is really, really cool, because especially with these contenders teams, having a name associated with them hasn't had a super good history, like the Seattle Skyfoxes having to get rid of their name, or Toronto Esports, kind of ending in disgrace. And not really having too much to do with Toronto. There's genuine efforts being put out, as you can see in our marketing, with a bunch of stuff being put out in French as well as English, right? To really connect with the French Canadian audience, the Quebecois audience, and to feel like there is a reason we are called the Montreal Rebellion, because we really do want to have a connection to the city of Montreal, to the people of Montreal, in a way that a lot of, frankly, OWL teams haven't been able to do yet, because they don't get to play in their home city all the time. They don't get to live in their home city all the time. I think we're going to really take a lot of advantage of that, and that's like a goal of the organization that I really appreciate a lot. So it's going to be really great. We're going to be in the house soon, and things are going to kick off. I'm very excited, actually.
Good. I mean, it sounds like you're definitely jazzed, but I wanted to kind of get into I wouldn't say it's a hard or a fastball, but you went from, and again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in saying this, but on the British Hurricane, you were listed as an analyst, and now with the Montreal Rebellion, you are head coach. Is there a jarring feeling for you kind of transitioning into a role that undoubtedly has a lot more responsibility, or is this something that you kind of, came up through when you were younger, maybe played sports and kind of a natural leader? Is this something that you're intimidated by at all? Kind of what's your thoughts about the head coach kind of transitional period?
Sure. I mean, there's some sense of it is a different role. I do feel comfortable with the responsibility of overseeing the team and kind of taking a more broad stance. Like, I'm not just in charge of strategy. Now I have to worry about, my players' well-being and their, mentality in a much more direct way, and work on managing everything together, making us a cohesive group. But yeah, it's certainly not intimidating. It is something where it's not something I've done in esports before.
Sure.
So I do want to kind of tread carefully and like be aware of areas where I might make mistakes and try and correct them as quickly as possible. I don't want to go in just thinking I'm, doing everything right, because there's no way that that's the case, right? I want to try and identify my weaknesses and improve them as quickly as I can. But I'm certainly not, certainly not intimidated or worried about that. I think we have a really good team to work with. So it's not like a lot of heavy lifting has to be done in that sense.
Sure.
and I have, players. We have a core of players from first gen. We have a core of players from XL2. We have coaching coming from first gen, and we have a lot of good insight and assistance and connection to the staff of our OWL team as well. So we have a ton of resources at our disposal. So I don't really feel like it's not like I'm the only one that has to do these things. We have a great support network for everyone. So it really feels like a very natural transition, especially considering in my background, I've worked as a supervisor and a manager in a retail scenario before with people more than double my age, that don't want to listen to me at all.
So this isn't new,
Yeah. So
even if you get some bad seeds,
I'm worried about. Yeah, exactly. It's not something I'm intimidated about. I know, broadly what to worry about, what's coming. I've been in esports and I've seen enough teams, and you see a lot of things that happen, and you pick up a lot along the way. And again, I have the staff that I have with me shouldn't be underestimated either. I mean, I think Blizzard could be a head coach for a lot of Overwatch contenders teams. I mean, he was head coach of first gen. So as a manager, he's super invaluable, because not only can he do all those managerial things, but I can also, when we want an extra set of eyes to look at something, we can ask for it. When we say, hey, there are 3 players that want a one-on-one before our scrims today, I'm taking one of them, Zenith is taking the other. Can you do a one-on-one with this player and talk to them about these topics that we know, they need to go over? They want to go through one of their VODs. I have complete trust in giving that over to Blizzard. And that's an insane advantage and an insane way to be able to use your manager that I don't think very many head coaches have the ability to ask their managers to contribute in that way. So I think it is a natural transition for me personally, but because of the system that we've built, because of the staff personnel and the players that we have, it's not a particularly big burden. We've got a really good group of guys, I think.
Well, good. It sounds like everything has been fairly easy. The transition, still there's moving to be done, but the players all seem to be super excited. You seem you through the moon. Quit the job. We're doing this full time. It's time to really invest. I think gonna see a little bit of a level up. I think the training weights are off. You can reach peak dream analysis, coaching, all that jargon, but within contenders, within that topic, I want to get a little bit of a read on your fellow opponents. Now that we know that North America is being split, you have landed within North America East, along with Fusion University, the Uprising Academy, Gladiators Legion, Mayhem Academy, Second Wind, Chicken Contendies, and Bermuda. Is this an easy group?
So I know that is our group. I am not sure if it has been confirmed which is East and which is West, even to the teams yet.
Ooh, okay.
I think it's just being put out that way just so people have a delineation, but I'm not sure that that's been decided on to be to be clear. So we'll see.
Fair enough.
I think that that of the 2 groups, we got the easier one. Yes. I think that the big difference to me is in the trials teams coming in. I think the trials teams in our group are not as good as Square One. Square One in the other group is a GOATS team that I think will give trouble to some of the academy teams. I expect there to not be that much struggle in our group coming from the trials teams. And I think the big question for me comes in with 2 of the academies, 1 in each group. One is NRG. In the other group, I'm not sure which NRG is going to show up, if it's going to be the NRG from the beginning of last season,
right?
That looked kind of messy, or NRG towards the end of last season, where they looked like they had improved and leveled up quite a bit. So it really depends on which NRG is going to show up. So that'll tell us a lot about the competitiveness, the strength of the other group. And then also the question of in our group, what's going to happen with Uprising is Fusion's just going to stay in Overwatch League. He's only played 2 games in Overwatch League, so they could just send him back to Contenders, have Axiom play main tank, have Color Hex on DPS, and Fusion stays in Contenders, in which case they are a pretty strong team in the current meta. But I think the loss of Fusions would hit them pretty hard. So I would expect them to be, less competitive for the first or second place in the group if they don't have Fusions. So I think that's really going to, influence things a lot. There's maybe some flux going on with Atlanta as well. Obviously, Dogman has moved up. Mm-hmm. Not sure what's going on with Gator, similar to Fusions. So it's still kind of questionable. But surely if Fusions stays with Uprising Academy, and then Gator is gone from ATL, Dogman is gone from ATL, and NRG kind of falls back into their old form, then certainly they would have probably a weaker group than ours. It kind of depends on how a lot of these roster shakeups are going to work, especially considering we don't know the exact start date, but it is very soon.
Sure.
We know it's going to be starting soon, so they're not going to have a ton of time to adapt if there are these roster changes. So there's a sense of like the jury still being out. But if things go in a typical like average way, I would expect us to have the weaker group overall than the other one.
So you're telling me I get to see my boy Dreamcast overthrow the Fusion University dynasty? Is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, I don't think we play them right away. I'm not looking at the schedule right now, so I'm not sure. I think it'll depend on when we play them in the season. If we can get our everyone peaking and kind of everything working together at the right time. But honestly, because of my understanding of the format, I think the majority of the teams make playoffs, because I'm fairly certain in the other regions where it's 8 teams in the region, 6 teams make playoffs, 2 teams don't, and then the first and second seed get a first round bye. So that would mean we would really only need to avoid being bottom 2 in our group to make playoffs. And in my mind, the goal of every team this split should be to finish top 3 and to make the showdown.
Sure.
Making the showdown to me is the ultimate goal. That is what I care about more than anything else this season. So overthrowing Funi in the regular season, giving them a loss there, doesn't matter that much to me. Like, obviously, I want to win every set, but even if we do that, that does not satisfy me for the season. If we beat them in the regular season, but then don't make the showdown, we have failed. So what the goal is to make the showdown. So if we meet them in the playoffs, yes, I definitely want to beat them and make the showdown. Playing them in the regular season, I'm not as concerned about, because even if we win, that doesn't mean we get the ultimate goal. That's what I want, is to peak during playoffs and to be able to make it to the showdown. That's what's going to give my players meaningful LAN experience. That's what's going to give them the international shine, where scouts are going to be seeing them instead of looking at the World Cup. This is how I can get my players signed to Overwatch League. And that's my job, is to help them develop as players and to help us succeed as a team, so that we can get people transitioned into the Overwatch League. The way we do that is by making the showdown. So that's our focus.
Definitely. I can understand, that is the goal of a coach, right? You're trying to grow the players. You kind of almost have to put yourself second, because this is a kind of a supportive role, where we're trying to, help people grow and facilitate them. So, it is a bit of a change up now that we have, lands for Contenders and the showdown and the gauntlet. Are we looking farther ahead to the gauntlet? Are we perusing what it might be like to play against some of the best teams in the world? Is that something that is it too far reaching, or is that maybe like a stars and moon goal? So if we shoot for the stars, we just land on the showdown, and we perform well at the showdown, and if we make the gauntlet, that's just extra credit.
Well, the gauntlet would be obviously at the end of second season.
Sure.
So we're not really worried about the gauntlet right now at all, just because that's so far in the future. We're more concerned with right now and
Of
what we can
course.
do with this season, which will get us to Showdown. But I think that I mean, maybe if the meta shifts a lot in the second season, that the Korean or Chinese teams will be better than the Western teams, but I don't think that's the case right now. I think that the level of competition at the Atlantic Showdown will be higher than the level of competition at the Pacific Showdown, and that's just because of the current meta, because
Sure.
Korea just hasn't caught up yet. There's totally a potential that that'll happen. I know Element Mystic is scrimming in North America right now. I guess they traveled to NA. I don't actually know the
Interesting.
details, but that's what I've heard. So I'm assuming that that's to be able to scrim OWL teams while they're here. Again, I don't actually know. It seems like they could get plenty of value scrimming in Korea, so they have to have some sort of reason to want to come over
Right.
here to scrim. I would assume Overwatch League teams, but it's only speculation. But I think that's smart, because I think the teams here are better than the
Sure.
teams there. And I think that, for example, there are some teams in the offseason for Overwatch League that went and boot camped in Korea or went and boot camped in China. And they should have boot camped in Europe. And they should have boot camped in Europe the way that Paris did. And look at how it paid off for Paris.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the best North American academies versus the best European teams, the best European academies, will be the highest level of competition. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, but the only way I could really see that happening is if the two Chinese academy teams, Guangzhou and Hangzhou, end up just being straight ballers, just being insanely good. You know what I mean? Otherwise, maybe Korea sends a good team or two. But I think between Europe and NA, we will have better teams. And then I'm interested to see the performance of this supposed South American super team that has gotten together purely for the purpose of the Showdown, which I think is the right play.
Definitely.
I can't put enough emphasis on the Showdown, how important I think that is to any tier 2 player, aspirations of making it to tier 1. The Showdown is how you do it. You have to get there. And I think that's what everyone's going to do. So I'd be really, really interested to see if they are able to follow through on what seems like a clear path to the Showdown for them. Knock on wood, right? But I would love to see, how competitive they are as well. I think South America gets a little bit of a bad rap. And I think that if they can put together a really solid team that performs well, not at World Cup, which
Sure.
I'm not a big fan of, as far as level of competition. But if they come in here and they're competing with, the likes of Funi, the likes of Giganti, these multi-title winning contenders teams in the major regions, that says a lot, I think. And I think this gives a big opportunity to them. So I hope that they're able to show up strong and take advantage of it.
Well, my friend, I think we're coming to about that time. I know you got scrims coming up here in a little bit, and I don't want to, you got to eat. You got to hydrate. Shout outs to Hydrate Bot. We don't have a chat because this is pre-recorded, but whatever. But I do want to give any last words. The floor is yours. I have a very tiny soapbox, but feel free to use it for your own machinations.
Sure. I mean, just in general, I really like the content that you put out, Joe.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, buddy.
I appreciate you inviting me on. It means a lot. And I do like to be able to talk a little bit about, my personal background, my personal life a little bit,
Sure.
in case people want to get to know me. So
Exactly.
I really appreciate the opportunity. And I just want to give shout outs, obviously, to the people in my life that have been supportive, my family, my girlfriend, that have, kind of made this possible. I've had a really fast moving, kind of crazy last year. I made that trip to LA at the end of April of last year, so less than a year later, and I'm moving into a gaming house to be a head coach of an academy team. So, and there's no way that happens without a ton of support from the people around me. So, that goes in my personal life, but also people in esports and Overwatch as well. People like you, Bench, Yiska, Nuki, who took a chance on me, brought me in, and saw potential. So Baroy has been there, been a mentor to me as well. So A lot of people that I respect, and I owe a lot to Jane, obviously, for giving me my my first chance on that contest. So just a lot of love, and I think that's something that we could do with more in esports, is being uplifting to each other, trying to help other people that we see positive things in succeed. So just messages of positivity, and lift each other up. That's how esports is going to prosper, is if we all help each other. There's enough room for all of us right now. It's going to keep growing. So I think more positivity will help us all in the long run.
There we go. We're bringing it full circle, all the way back to the grassroots, where we had that beautiful community on those IRC boards. Was there a little ish talk? Of course, but for the most part, it was, the love of the competition, and as much as a meme WCG is nowadays, it's for the love of the game. So this has been episode 12, Dream. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. Again, we'll see what happens for this season, and how busy you are. Maybe we'll get you back on if you've got some time. But thanks again for the viewers. I've got his socials below. I've got my socials under me. Go ahead, follow us. He says more big brain stuff. I'm a memer. It is what it is. But we'll see you episode 13. We'll see who comes on for F13. We might venture out. We might see. But until then.